everyone, and welcome to this bonus episode. It's been an incredible season 4. Thank you so much for joining us. I've loved hearing from you and getting messages and emails. I've just so enjoyed being part of this village. So what I thought I would do now is tackle some of those amazing questions that I've received. How do I know if my teenager is depressed or just moody? So let me start with, what is teenage depression? Essentially, it's really normal for our teens to have ups and downs, have sad feelings. Sometimes they even last several days. And our sad teens can have trouble sleeping or eating or even concentrating and getting motivated. But your depressed teen is much more than just someone who is sad or moody. It can sometimes be a little bit tricky to tell the difference between normal sadness and depression, but really what we're looking for is, how long do the emotions last? And we're looking at behavior changes. So we essentially look in mental health for about a 2-week period. So often when we see teenagers, it's actually months before they come and see us. But we also then look at, how strong are those emotions and how much time are our young people spending ruminating and thinking about things that are troubling them. So some of the common signs of teenage depression can be a little bit tricky to spot, but if we look at things like the psychological, emotional, behavioral, and physical changes, we will see a few things that stand out. So psychological, we also think of as cognitive, so things that are going on inside your teen's head. So are they struggling to solve problems and make decisions? Are they becoming forgetful and have these negative thoughts like, I'm not worthy, or life's not worth living, I just can't do this anymore? Then we also look for emotional signs. So you might have a child who feels sad or tearful or moody, but then don't forget, some of our teens also feel irritable or numb. And then we have these outbursts of anger that we forget are signs of depression. Our teens can feel worthless or feel like harming themselves. And then behavioral signs would be, they would stop contacting friends that they love being with. They stop doing things that they just enjoyed before. They begin having school problems. And a lot of these underlying mental health problems can come out in using alcohol or experimenting with drugs. And then our physical signs would be, we're looking for tiredness, loss of energy, sleep problems. So our teens are sleeping a lot or struggling to wake up in the morning. Their appetite changes. They might even feel a little bit vague and unsure about why all this is changing. So what do we do to help our depressed teens? It's so important when our teens are struggling with their mood or they may have depression. A quote I loved was by Michelle Mitchell last season. She said, our teenagers need to know they deserve help. And so when our young people are struggling, we bring them alongside us and say, let's go together because you deserve help. We're going to go find somebody who can support you. And so what we do is we go and see a mental health professional initially together. If your teen first won't go on their own, sometimes it's helpful for a parent to go and see a GP first to talk through some of the next steps. Depression is unlikely to go away on its own, but very often teenagers won't seek help themselves. And so they need us to come alongside them and go with them for support. The first thing we often do is go and seek help from a GP. If your teenager won't go with you, it can be very helpful to sometimes go to the GP yourself and ask them for strategies for the next steps. But many schools have a school counselor who are fantastic at working with teenagers and their teachers. Psychologists, and then of course counselors, there's local community centers and local mental health services. I know that at the moment, because there are wait lists, there are some things that you can do at home to support your young person. So what you're looking to do is focus on their physical health and their well-being. So checking, are there healthy food choices and healthy drink choices in your home, in the cupboard, things that are tasty and nutritious, and options that they might go and pursue as meals. Try and make sure that there's regular scheduled physical activity, even to start off with just a 10-minute walk a day around the block. If you have a dog, send your teen off with the dog or go with them. Also encourage your teen to get enough sleep. So if your child is having trouble sleeping, try not let them nap during the day. I know that can be really tricky, and that might be something you talk with your GP if that is the only way that they're getting some rest. But doing relaxing activities before bed, avoiding screen time at least an hour before bedtime is really helpful. Also remember that some of our teens can try to self-medicate with drugs and alcohol. Essentially what that means is they're trying to numb their pain. So keep an eye on that. And then also talk about their relationships and their feelings. But remember, your relationship with your child is so important. Find ways that you can connect with your teenager day to day. Also suggest other people that they can spend time with that they value. Doing things at home like sharing family meals, try to reduce family conflict, make sure routines are maintained. Routines are a very important part of reducing anxiety. Also accept that your teen is also going to have some good days and some bad days. Remember that overcoming depression doesn't happen overnight, but there is help and there are strategies that your teen can use in the tough times. The recovery process usually takes some ups and downs and some time. So continue to look out for those warning signs that I've already mentioned. Please remember, no one is to blame for a setback or for a mental health condition. Continue to seek support. Remember that your teen doesn't need it, they deserve support. My teen doesn't have a social life. Should I be worried? Well, Sarah, it is so natural for us to worry about our teenagers. But we need to remember that we've got to separate our own emotions from our teens because they are so different to us. Our teens are even different to each other if you have more than one in your home like I do. So we have teens that could be introverts, they could be extroverts, or they could be ambiverts. So the way we define an introvert is somebody who is energized by alone time or downtime. I'm actually an introvert. So I get energized when I read, or I just have a nap in the afternoon, or I have quiet. And extroverts, like some people in my family, they get energized around people. They love being around people, and the more they're with people, the more they seem to get energy. As an introvert, when I've been around people, I'm exhausted. Your ambivert kind of is a bit of both. Us psychologists love to create new terms for everything. So for your teenager, you may have someone who's really just still pursuing their interests and figuring out, do I love people? Don't I love people? You may already have seen patterns in them from when they're a toddler. What's important is to tune into what is important for your teen. You may find that you love seeing people 5 nights a week. For your teenager, 1 night a week might be enough, and that is filling their social cup. What we also need to make sure our teens are doing is that they are pursuing other interests. So if your teen is just lying at home in their bedroom all day and all night, that would be something to worry about. But if your teen is still doing a sport or a musical activity, or they're seeing people occasionally, they're still engaged in schoolwork, we're kind of looking for a pattern where they are doing certain activities. We know that they're in a healthy way. I love the research by Peter Benson. He's got a TED talk called Finding Sparks, and he talks about these different aspects of sparks that our young people have. Really what a spark is that thing that makes your teen go, yes, when they get up in the morning. Maybe for your teen is actually just spending time around animals, and that's what gives them life. For another teen might be being in a play or being around lots of people or being the life of the party. Being their spark champion is really what Peter Benson calls it. So finding that thing that your teen loves and celebrating that with them. So if you have an introverted child who is happy to go out occasionally, support that. Support what your child enjoys and what they love. And also then, of course, make sure that you're having connection time with them yourself. Not something that exhausts them if they're an introvert, but having those family times and family connections are very important for our well-being. Any form of connection is really important for our well-being. Connection is just going to look different for each of our teens and each of the adults in the house. So Natasha is one of our listeners from the UK, and she wrote to me and asked me about her teenage son selling treats at school. Thank you so much for your email, Natasha. I loved this question. I have to say that I really admire your teen's entrepreneurial and business ability. It sounds to me like he's going to go really far in life. I mean, wow, he's 14, and to think that he must have planned just how much was enough to make a small profit without turning his friends off because the products were too expensive. And then he would have thought about, well, what sells best and what should I choose and what will people like? So I was so impressed by your son. So if you can catch this and harness this ability early and in a positive way, that will be such a good thing. Of course, if you feel selling at the school is inappropriate, I think also just check with the school because the schools will have their own rules around this. But you might then help him set up a small business in some other way, maybe online or at a local market. There's so many young people doing amazing things like thrift shopping and then reselling their merchandise online. Of course, with the help of being monitored online and online safety and so on. But I'm not suggesting it has to be thrift items for your son, but find something he's interested in. And then he might start to create a business plan and even get really good at money and accounting skills. So just like Natasha, I think it's so important when our teens have something that they're passionate about and that they love, that we focus on that and we harness those abilities and we support them in those. So Natasha, I would love to hear from you a little bit later in a few months' time. Please email us and let us know how your son is going. My teen is so defiant and it's driving me crazy. We just seem to butt heads at the moment. Oh, I get this. You sometimes have a child who is compliant when they're a really young child, and then suddenly they hit the teens and everything changes. Their personality seems to change. Other times you actually have a child who is stronger in nature than your other ones, and you notice this even when they're little. They're going to be our world changers one day. In the meantime, they're practicing by trying to change their parents. Sometimes it can feel really hard to do. But we need to keep leaning in and find ways to stay connected with our teenagers through these tricky years. It's when our teens act as though they don't need us that we are actually the most valuable to them. What's going on around this time is that by pushing against something, usually us because we are the people they feel safest with, they try out their ideas and their new behaviors, and this happens partly because your teen is developing, they're expressing and testing out independent ideas and values, sometimes that they don't agree with ours on, and they're testing the boundaries to see what's appropriate behavior. They do this because they know that we won't reject them and we won't stop loving them. So developing independence is such a key part of growing up. It's actually a good sign that your teen is trying to take on more responsibility, and it's even healthy, even if it doesn't feel like it at times. Teenagers are also still trying to learn how to handle disagreements in appropriate ways. But I have to stress that this is not an excuse for constant rudeness or abusive behavior. Sometimes defiance can be taken too far, and that can come from some kind of attempt to meet an underlying need for power or control in unhealthy ways. Sometimes something else is going on for our defiant teen. Sometimes they push away from people because they're hurting or they feel insecure or they're overwhelmed or they're afraid about something. Maybe something's going on in their world around them at school. So what do we do when we're standing with a defiant teen? I think the most important thing to do, which isn't always easy, is to deal with our own emotions and our own anger first. Deal with our own stuff away from our teens. Then also not expect our teens to do things that we don't even do as adults, like jump off the couch immediately when you ask them to do the dishes. Give them some time. Being a parent also means sometimes your teen won't like what you do or what you say. It's important for us to model appropriate behavior, model ways of disagreeing. When a teen feels safe, they begin to feel open enough to try something new. Remember that change doesn't happen overnight. We need to aim for opportunities where we can listen and we can understand and we can try to solve problems together with our teens. And when it's the heat of the moment and there are explosions and emotions are raw, those are times we actually allow our teens and ourselves some space. Nothing constructive is going to happen in the heat of the moment. Then when our teens come back to us, those are the times we might talk through and give them strategies for how to deal with conflict and tricky situations. It's also really important to use humor at times. That can just really be a circuit breaker. Also avoid putting your child down or being sarcastic when you're frustrated. That doesn't usually help a situation. Even ignoring shrugs and eye rolls, that is sometimes just something we have to just put aside for the moment. And then also allowing for natural consequences to happen. If our teen has been defiant and they're fighting to put their washing in the washing basket, sometimes just simply not having a clean shirt the next time they need it is all the reminder that they'll need. Just keep looking ahead. This is just such a short period in our young people's lives. It won't last forever. Stay the safe place. Don't forget that our teens are developing their own mind and their own will, and they're becoming their own person. And that's exactly what we want.